Good afternoon and welcome everybody to the Immigration Law webinar. This is Immigration 101 for Human Resources. Today we are going to be speaking about compliance, including the new E-Verify. Well, E-Verify is not exactly that new, but the new Form I-9, which will become effective on May the 7th. Immigration reform is very hot in the news, and one of the predictions I'm ready to make is that the E-Verify system will become mandatory very, very soon. We did some last-minute changes to the presentation today to incorporate the proposed amendments. And the one-liner I'm going to give you all today is get your I-9s in order, because E-Verify is the steam train that cannot be stopped, folks. E-Verify is included in the new proposed immigration legislation, and this is something that the President supports. This is something that has strong bipartisan support, and there is no question whatsoever that this will be part of any new comprehensive immigration program that we see. So we have wonderful attendance. I think we had over 300 people registered, giving a few minutes for folks to come and join us. By the way, for those of you who were looking at work visa options, there was quite frankly too much material to cover, so I've decided to split this into a two-part series. The second part, where I will repeat some of the highlights of the new Form I-9 and E-Verify, and I will also cover the various work visa options. Again, for those of you who may not be familiar, the new Form I-9, that is the form that is used to verify any worker. That's not foreign workers, that's any worker, including the CEO of the company. Must complete new Form I-9 when hired. This must be done within 3 days of hire. We're going to go into the details, and this new form is mandatory effective May 7, 2013. Going with this is the new M274 Handbook for Employers, guidance for completing the Form I-9. For those of you who want to read all, I just printed up another copy. I think it's about almost 150 pages. We're going to give you the short version, and the good news is you're not going to have to read it if you concentrate or listen to today's webinar. The contents of today's webinar will be recorded and available on our website, so feel free to encourage your friends and colleagues to sign on and listen to it at their leisure. The other good news is the chat column will be open and live. We are going to give you an opportunity to ask questions, so we encourage all of you to log on, use the chat column, and put your questions. I'm not leaving today until I've answered all of your questions. Now, I just got back into beautiful Los Angeles, where our offices are headquartered. We have some 17 lawyers with the firm. I was in our New York office, and I was also in Washington last week, where we got to get an update on all the latest developments with regard to immigration reform. So today is the day where we're going to summarize E-Verify and the new Form I-9 so that all of you will be ready. I am going to go somewhat into the weeds on completing the new Form I-9, how to comply with the Immigration Reform Act of 1986 that made it mandatory to verify an employee's right to be employed in the United States. And by the way, folks, that's special language. We are dealing with an employee's right to be employed in the United States and employer's verification thereof. My email address is up there. There's our website, wolfstorff.com, free webinar. And the reason I mention our website, folks, is that we have regular webinars. In addition, on May the 1st, we're going to do a very specific one focused on the B Visitors Visa and the Visa Waiver Program. Is it business or pleasure? We have another one on May 16 focusing on LGBT options, immigration options, exciting developments there with the Supreme Court likely to jump. On June the 3rd, of course, I've mentioned my May 28 work visa option. That is not yet up, and registration is not yet open for that. That will be in a week or so. You can register for that. On June the 6th, we will have an F1 student webinar. On July the 11th, artists and entertainment webinar. July the 18th, extraordinary scientists, national interest waivers. August the 15th is for physicians. Then we start again with October for the H-1B and perm options, which is green card. So we do cover a variety of topics. If there's anything that has not been covered that you would like us to cover, please write in. My email address is my name, Bernard@Wolfsdorf. You can see my picture. Now, I do have to make a little confession, folks. That picture's a few years old. My beard's actually gone gray, and somebody actually commented that I may be too young. Well, gee, if 58 is too young, then thank you for the compliment. Free green card to you. Anyway, I like to have a little humor. This topic is not that humorous, to be direct. Immigration is very serious, and when I get into the topic of E-Verify, you will see that the fines that are being proposed in Congress are massive, up to $7,500 per violation. So I send a strong message to employers. I don't like to read PowerPoints. I know you can all read as well as I do. 87.9 million into the ICE coffers, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement. 8,000 employers have been, I use the word popped, excuse my silly sense of humor, but 8,000 is quite a lot. We're going to see more and more enforcement, and it's very easy to figure out why the government is going this way. In a nutshell, it's very simple. The government believes that if they remove the lure, that is L-U-R-E, the lure. That's my phony English accent, so please don't struggle to follow it. I'm actually born in South Africa and a proud American dual citizen, but I have a phony-ish English accent, so sometimes you have some trouble following me. I also have a pretty silly sense of humor, so you don't have to laugh at my jokes at all. You can laugh at me, I won't even know. But we've got the chat column there, so maybe you'll be sharing your comments with me. And again, I encourage you all on the chat column to please put your questions in. I actually am interested in opening a relationship with you. There's no professional relationship with many of you, but do scan in your I-9s and send them to me with your questions. And within 24 to 48 hours, you'll get an answer, and you will not get a bill. Did I hear that right? You will not get a bill. That is correct. We do not charge for a little bit of I-9 advice here and there where you got a little question. We can usually answer it really quickly. So it's time, folks, to get your I-9s in order. I'm trying to kill a little bit of time because I see more and more people registering. We're up to 130 participants. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining today, and I hope you find today's program a very entertaining and maybe a little bit informing, knowledgeable. What is the right word that I'm struggling with here? The bottom line is you're going to learn everything there is to know about the I-9, the new I-9 form that becomes effective on May the 7th. This is the form that you're going to complete to verify an employee's right to be employed in the United States. We also know without a doubt that the Obama administration is going to come down with a boot that is a serious boot on employers who violate the law. How do we know this? Because the Bush administration did virtually nothing to enforce this law. There was a hiatus of 8 years where we all forgot everything we knew about I-9 enforcement, and the Obama administration came on with a thud, a thump, a thud. What is the right adjective? I am struggling today, folks, to find good adjectives, but the simple bottom line is that's why we say since 2009 there has been massive enforcement against employers. Let me start off with a little bit of good news. I hope my clients are not listening, but I recently handled 2 audits, both involving about 300 employees. Sadly, more than half the workforce had to be let go, which is very good indeed. Hopefully we can find some options for these folks. But the bottom line is, on the one where I was absolutely shocked, I hope ICE isn't listening in here, but we ended up with a warning. We ended up with a warning only. Good job, Bernie Wolfsdorf team, in getting everything cleaned up and corrected. We got our I-9s in order, and we actually got a warning, which was a shock to me. I almost fainted when the ICE officer brought the I-9s back. We had fixed them all, done them correctly, and that audit ended up with nothing but a warning, and I thought we were going to have a lot more. So let's run through some statistics. Criminal prosecution of egregious violators. Yes, knowingly hiring of 10 or more U.S. workers. I will repeat, this is not civil law, folks. If you knowingly hiring 10 or more undocumented workers, you have 10 or more undocumented workers on your staff, you are subject to criminal penalties. We are not just talking debarment. We are not just talking fines. We are talking jail time. Yes, sadly, that is part of it. Did I scare everybody? I didn't mean to. Most of the cases that we see do not involve knowingly hiring 10 or more undocumented workers, but I do have to mention that there are criminal prosecution of egregious violators. Now, generally speaking, these ICE audits do not happen randomly. They are all lead-driven. I repeat, lead, L-E-A-D. Is that the right spelling we have today? So maybe your competition is going to call ICE and report that you have undocumented workers. Maybe there's going to be a disgruntled worker. We see that all the time. And it may well be that ICE will come and serve a notice of intention to inspect your I-9s, and you have 3 days, folks, to get those I-9s in order. The good news is you've all signed on to our webinar, which means you're going to have your I-9s in order well before you get that ICE notice, because anybody who does not have their I-9s in order is walking around with what I call a hospital gown. I'm not going to explain that horrible analogy because it's a little bit crude, so please excuse me, but we do not want to be in hospital gown mode. We want to be protected. I'm always embarrassed, but yes, recently I cut myself and had to go to hospital, get my finger stitched up, and they made me wear one of those silly things, and I felt like an employer who didn't have his I-9s in order. Okay, Bernie, this is not Rush Limbaugh. Let's go with some serious stuff. We're talking about I-9 statistics. Now, the current version of the form, folks, most of you know how to read. That's May the 7th, 2013. You must use the current form of the I-9. How do we find the current form? Folks, instead of following my slides, you can just Google the word I-9 or Form I-9. It'll come up. There you go. USCIS will lead you to the I-9 form. It's suddenly become a 7-page form. We have extracts of it on here. Now, so that is the new version. The prior 2 versions are no longer valid after May 7th. So please make sure you are using the current version of the Form I-9 to verify the right of your new hires. I repeat, new hires. I repeat, new hires. Bernie, will you stop repeating yourself? You're a stuck record. And will you stop talking to yourself? Gets a little bit silly. No, I will not stop talking to myself. The new 2-page form. We describe this as the single most complicated 2-page form in the U.S. government. It is complicated, but here's the good news, folks. I've got lots of good news. The new form is a whole lot better than the old form. It is somewhat intuitive in the sense that it does help you answer some of the questions. Now, there were some changes which are very important. Unexpired documents are no longer valid. Somebody comes in with an expired American passport. That does not mean they are entitled to work in the U.S. Now, how many Americans have a valid passport? How many Americans know where their Social Security card is? And folks, that is the original document. We are not interested in photocopies. You, the employer, have to verify that you have seen the original document. So if I've got an expired California driver's license, is that proof of identity? No, no, no. It may not be used. What about the new U.S. passport card? By the way, folks, if you want a cool little document, this is a whole lot cheaper and you don't travel a whole lot. Just up to Canada or Mexico, the U.S. passport card is a nifty little card that's a whole lot cheaper, and that's a very handy little document. There's also the new combined EAD. That word is Employment Authorization Document. That's for foreign nationals who are working in the United States, students, OPT, pending adjustment of status. That is now a List A document. What is a List A document? A List A document is a document that reflects not only your right to be employed, but also has your identity on it. So the new Form I-9 is a very simple situation. We want to verify, A, that you have the right to be employed, and B, that you are the person you claim to be. Am I the real Bernie Wolfstorff? Really? Identity theft? Could somebody else do this phony English accent besides me? Is anybody else as kind of hyper as me? I've only had 2 cups of coffee, so that's all I will claim or admit to having taken leading into this. 1 cup this morning and 1 cup that I just finished. Stop that, Bernie. It's irrelevant. But here's a simple bottom line, is that the I-9 form basically verifies your right to be employed and that it verifies your identity. Now, what do you have with an identity theft case? What about all the other Bernie Wolfstorffs running around there with copies of my Social Security card and driver's license? Well, you know what? As long as they're working with the Social Security and their taxes go into my account, I'm not going to complain. That's going to be in my Social Security account. Bernie, stop making silly jokes. It's an awful thing. Identity theft is terrible, and the problem with E-Verify is that we're likely to see an increase in identity theft with the mandatory E-Verify that's coming through. What other changes have we seen with the I-9 form? Again, all of you can go and read the new 150-page M274 handbook. Bernie, where do I get this M274 handbook? Very easy. Just Google M274 handbook and the thing will come up, all 150 pages. You can close down this boring webinar and just go and read your 150 pages. You won't get it all because I'm going to summarize in the next hour everything that's relevant in that book and a whole lot more. So everything you need to know about I-9s and E-Verify you will get from this webinar. So please share the recording with your friends and we'll do another version of it at some point. Now, what are the changes where they are? What other changes have been made? Now, this is really interesting. There's a certificate of naturalization. I have one myself as a naturalized American citizen. This is Form N550. It's got my picture on, looks very official, got all the nice stamps. It is not a List A document. What is a List A document? A List A document shows your right to be employed and your identity. So here I have a certificate issued by the United States District Court, which has got my picture on it with a stamp, shows I'm a U.S. citizen, and you, the employer, cannot use it to hire me. Unexpired reentry permit no longer works as well. Okay, so what else do we have? The newest version, the Social Security number is not required for Section 1 unless enrolled in E-Verify. Hey, Bernie, that's kind of confusing. Not required, really? But the simple bottom line is that it's on the form. So, do we put it in? Well, if it's E-Verify, you do have to put it in, but it's not required for Section 1. What is Section 1, folks? Section 1 of the I-9 form is the part that the foreign national has to complete. So Section 1 is the part the foreign national completes. Section 2 is the part you, the employer, will complete to verify this person's right to be employed, and you have to do that within 3 days of the commencement of employment. What about Section 3? Wait, Bernie, I haven't got 1 and 2. What is 3? Section 3 is for re-verification and rehires, and this is recommended for changes of name. So a woman gets married. Bernie, stop being sexist. A man gets married. You know, my wife's name is Gu, G-U. My name is Wolfstorff. In the state of California, I could legally call myself Bernie Gu. In fact, I'm thinking of doing that because at least everybody will be able to spell my name. Plus, it'll be pretty popular in China if I go as Bernie Gu. So what would have to happen? I have to update my own I-9 form if I decide to go as Bernie Gu, G-U. My wife is Shelley Gu, and I'm going as Bernie Gu. Maybe, hey, wait, stop being silly. Maybe she could stay as Shelley Wolfstorff, and I'll go as Bernie Gu and really confuse everybody. Nobody's going to know who's who. But on a serious note, folks, if I change my name, then I do need to re-verify on Section 3 of the I-9 form, the new I-9 form. Now, who completes this form? Now, I just mentioned I am the CEO of my own company. although the truth is my wife now works in the company, so it's not clear who's the boss. It's certainly not clear to me or to anybody else who works here, but the good news is we have competent management, folks. We finally have competent MBAs helping to run instead of lawyers. So who completes the Form I-9? Citizens, nationals, and non-citizens. Hey, folks, that's everybody, okay? Everybody. Now, there is a grandfathered provision, which is if you were hired before November 7, 1986. Wait a second. How old do you have to be? My gosh, you've been in that job for a very long. 13 plus 14 is 27 years, so you've been in the job more than 27 years. You're grandfathered. Wait a second. I started this company 28 years ago. I am grandfathered. Thank goodness I'm not a grandfather yet, but I am grandfathered in and I do not need to complete Form I-9. Casual domestic workers, Bernie, you just sent a shudder up my spine. Did you say casual domestic workers are exempt? Does that mean other domestic workers are not exempt? Are you telling me that my regular full-time nanny, my butler, my gardener who work, you see, I'm a very rich guy, so I have full-time gardeners, butlers, drivers, I have all the staff, Bernie, dream on. And the bottom line is I have to verify their right to be employed or I have trouble. Oh, ouch, that was painful. What about an independent contractor? Well, that's easy. I'll just call my butler an independent contractor, give him an agreement. We'll go read the Walmart case. You know what? Independent contractor is not a way to avoid completing the I-9 form. Of course, some people try these tricky little tricks, but if you have knowledge the independent contractor is undocumented, folks, you have liability. Now, providing labor, this is the old contract labor thing. A lot of people are using these contract labor. Well, I didn't know that agency was sending me an undocumented worker. Oh, really? You didn't? Well, come on. You're just trying to get around the requirement. Not physically working on U.S. soil. I have this all the time. I have the situation where, you know, there's an American working in Europe. Well, you know what? That's not my problem. Okay, we're trying to protect the U.S. job market, American who is working abroad. So we have an American company. I represent a few multinationals, and they hire an American, and that person is stationed in London. Do they have to complete Form I-9, even though they're on the U.S. payroll? Look, you can do it, but who cares? We're more interested in whether or not that person has employment authorization in the United Kingdom. Okay, let's have some fun. E-Verify. My last webinar was called E-Scarify. Was that a cool name? I must bring that one back for the next thing. E-Verify or E-Scarify? Well, do not be E-Scarified by E-Verified. That didn't even rhyme. It didn't even come close. E-Verify and E-Scarify, there are mandatory E-Verify bills being introduced in Congress. By the way, folks, E-Verify is already mandatory in several states, localities, municipalities, several federal contracts, but there is talk that it will be mandatory across the board. So, Bernie, you have a crystal ball. Tell us, is E-Verify going to become mandatory for the 7 million? Bernie, did you repeat that number? 7 million employers in the United States are going to have to comply with mandatory E-Verify. There goes the agricultural business. Oops. There goes landscaping. Oops. There goes construction. Oops. Who's going to look after the elderly? Who's going to look after the poor? Did you know that the 11 million undocumented, my personal theory is higher than that the 11 or more undocumented million workers in the United States are picking strawberries, looking after elderly, looking after the young, looking after your babies? Hey, wait a second, let's fire them all. There's got to be some unemployed guys recently on parole that we could hire. Oh, stop that, Bernie. That didn't sound right. I'm sure we can find some parolees through some prison recruiting program to look after the elderly and look after the care. Why would we want to have dedicated immigrants caring for the elderly and our children when we could easily hire parolees to do this job and leave our beloved loved ones? Bernie, stop your political banter. Nobody's interested in that. Yeah, but it's a reality, folks. The people looking after, at least here in Southern California, large numbers of undocumented. The game is over. unless we start talking about E-Verify. The game is over if Congress doesn't provide an option, because E-Verify is going to shut down the possibility of undocumented working in the United States. So it's time to get your I-9s in order, everybody. What is E-Verify? It is an automated link to a federal database, to the Social Security. Basically, Homeland Security and SSA are going to connect. How do you register for E-Verify? Well, that's not hard. You just go to uscis.gov, so that's all we need to do. Log on to uscis.gov, sign up with E-Verify, and it's going to be really easy, right? You've got to sign on to the Memorandum of Understanding. Now, let me share with you. Last time I read this Memorandum of Understanding was 11 pages of gobbledygook. 11 pages of gobbledygook, and this is your agreement that you are going to sign between the employer, Homeland, and Social Security. That is Homeland Security and Social Security. Homeland Security, this is an enforcement agency. Social Security, your favorite agency that everybody loves working with. And then basically, when you complete the Form I-9 and E-Verify, you still have to complete the Form I-9, but you log on to E-Verify, you've completed the MOU, and you verify the right of the employee to be employed in the United States by logging on to the E-Verify system. Now, one of the requirements is that the staff members who use E-Verify must complete the online tutorial. And the new legislation actually requires that one has to review it from time to time. So whoever is doing E-Verify had better be familiar with how the system works. They had better have read the M274, and they had better have read and listened to our little webinar. By the way, we have an FAQ, that's frequently asked questions on I-9s. It's up to about 10 or 11 pages. For those of you who ask for it, we will be happy to send it to you. We will probably send it out to everybody who's registered for the program. My tech guy is here. Just remember, we need to send out the I-9 FAQ to everybody who's registered for the program, because it's got all the valuable information that you need in order to comply with this new I-9 requirement. Now, a few more important things. Electronic query submitted once I-9 is completed. Now, what am I talking about? Here's what I'm talking about. The E-Verify system cannot be used to pre-screen. Repeat, the E-Verify system cannot be used to pre-screen, and it can only be used for new hires. This is not a way to weed undocumented out of your workforce. If you use E-Verify in your existing workforce, you are committing discrimination. Yes, discrimination. I'm going to get into this. The employer is in a very difficult situation with the I-9. On the one hand, if they do their job too well, I repeat, if you do your job too well, you could have discrimination. If you over-document, if you request too much documentation, you could be subject to discrimination. You request too little documentation, you can have liability for constructively, knowingly hiring an undocumented worker. Oh my gosh, what a scary situation. So anyway, you fill out and you complete the E-Verify system once you've made the offer of employment. Repeat that, once you've made the offer of employment, you can then verify the person's right to be employed, and you may get a tentative non-confirmation. You may get a tentative non-confirmation which says there seems to be a problem. You see, I now applied under Bernie Goo because I decided to use my wife's name instead of Bernie Wolfstorff or Bernard Wolfstorff. My documentation's under Bernard Wolfstorff. I used Bernie Goo, and I got a tentative non-confirmation. The number seems good, but it's not registered because I haven't switched over my Social Security card. I've got to run down to the Social Security Administration, show them a certified copy of my marriage certificate, and they will then put me in the system as Bernie Goo, and then suddenly I'm authorized to be employed. So the question is, could I be employed with my old Social Security card, my new marriage certificate, my driver's license? And the answer is yes, yes, yes. So there's follow-up required. Now, for those of you who are in certain states such as Georgia, Alabama, we have here a little chart Is this confusing, folks? Are we a little bit confused? This is the chart that shows the framework for current E-Verify. In some states it's mandatory. In some states it's mandatory for all employers. So in the red states that we have there, Arizona, for example, all or most employers have to complete Form I-9. What if they don't complete it? Well, they could lose their business license. No big deal. Just lose your business license and close down the business. You know, Arizona, Louisiana, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, blah, blah, blah. This is already mandatory, so you already know everything I'm saying. You don't even need to listen to this. What if you have an employee who's in that state? Do you have to register? Well, it's not clear at this point that you do. Public employers and or contractors, so you're in Florida, dark blue, Colorado, contractors only. So there are various different requirements. In California and Illinois, it's actually been rescinded. It's not required as of the present time. So let's give an update on what's going on with this E-Verify. Approximately 500,000 companies have already signed on out of the 7 million employers. So E-Verify is the steam train that's moving forward. Over 1 million hiring sites represented, over 20 million E-Verify queries. This isn't small stuff, folks. E-Verify is real. It's coming. It's happening. And you may just want to be a little bit ahead of the game here by ensuring that your I-9s are in order by the time you log on to this database. Now, I normally spend quite a bit of time talking about whether or not it's right for you or whether it's not right for you. I'm just going to deal with the one-liner you can read instead of listening to me babble. But the simple bottom line is please understand what it is that you are signing up for. Make sure you read the Memorandum of Understanding. Make sure you have a comfort level. Make sure that your I-9s have been cleaned up. You do want to do an internal audit. This is a sales pitch, so let me put a little asterisk before it. You know, internal audit won't help you solve your problems because you don't know that you're doing it wrong unless somebody actually reviews the documentation. You do need to have an external audit of your I-9s, at least a sample, to make sure that whoever is doing it actually knows what they're doing wrong, because we tend to see the same mistakes time and time again. By the way, if you have a substantial portion of foreign nationals in your workforce, the average error rate that I see is somewhere between 50 to 60%. Would you repeat that number, Bernie? The average error rate that I see on I-9s is somewhere between 50 and 60%. The most significant element about signing up for E-Verify is that you waive your Fourth Amendment due process rights, and the government can literally come in and MOU gives ICE broad access to company records, including employment records, right to interview employees, periodic on-site visits. Bernie, would you please repeat that last point because we didn't hear it clear enough. MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding that you sign, gives Immigration and Customs Enforcement the right to access your company records, employment records, and the right to interview employees. So does ICE come along and take pictures and interview employees? Yes. How many times do they do that? Well, we have had at least 8,000 audits so far, and we're going to have a whole lot more in the next few years because the government is hiring more and more people to do these audits. And if you sign that Memorandum of Understanding, you do not have to have the 3-day notice of warning. They just come in. You better hand over those records. You don't hand over those records, you're going to have a subpoena and you're going to have some problems. So there we go, Memorandum of Understanding, MOU. Provides permitting DHS and SSA upon reasonable notice, which means virtually no notice, to review your records. It waives your right. They have the right to come in there, check your records, and Big Brother is now in your HR file. Welcome, Big Brother, to my human resources file. What else are they going to find? Over-documentation, document abuse. Wait a second, Bernie. You're talking in riddles. What is over-documentation and documentation? That's where you ask for more documentation. So Bernie Wolfstorff, this guy with a funny accent, you say to him, so Bernie Wolfstorff, I want to see your green card. Gotcha. Wait a second. What happened there? Bernie Wolfstorff, I want to see your green card. Gotcha. Well, I'm an American citizen. You asked me for a green card. That's discrimination. Now, I don't bother to file that kind of thing, but trust me, a lot of people do. I've seen them. And then let's do an audit. So Bernie Wolfstorff, we're going to hire you. Bernie Wolfstorff walks in with his funny accent, and he's got a driver's license, and he's got a social security card. Original social security card, no notation in it. I give you my driver's license. I give you my social security card. You say, Bernie Wolfstorff, I want to see your green card. Bernie Wolfstorff, I want to see your passport. Over-documentation, discrimination, folks. You've asked for more than the minimum documentation. You've asked for more than the minimum documentation. So who's going to enforce this? Nobody's going to know about it. Well, welcome, folks. The Department of Justice has the Office of Special Counsel, 1-800, call a cop, 1-800, we're going to rat on the employer, and trust me, the Department of Justice will follow up on 100% of all complaints for document abuse and over-documentation. So that's real. All right. Now we're on the topic of mandatory e-verify. I want to spend a little bit of time. I don't hate reading slides, but I need to spend a little bit of time talking about mandatory e-verify. The current bill that was dropped in Congress just this week makes e-verify mandatory nationwide. Repeat, e-verify mandatory nationwide. The bill will be based, there will be 90 days notice in the Federal Register. Oh, yippee, we get 3 months notice. Isn't that just wonderful? Half our workforce is undocumented. We got 3 days notice. How do we get into this? Easy. We listen to Bernie's webinar. We re-listen to Bernie's webinar. We read his FAQ. And we know everything there is to know about this. So within 90 days from the date of enactment, we're going to have the following. Federal contractors. Now just note, currently federal contractors are already subject to the mandatory e-verify requirement under the FAR regulations, but that's generally for contracts of more than $100,000. Are any federal contracts less than $100,000? So those of you who already have federal contracts, hey folks, some federal contractors are not complying with this. Oh my gosh, you better be aware. The law is all federal contractors, and doesn't have to be the whole company, but if you have federal contracts for over $100,000, you had better be registered with E-Verify. Soon it's going to be all federal contractors. Then what about big employers? Those with over 5,000 employees will have 2 years after the regulations. Not too bad. Those with 500 employees will have 3 years. So you've got plenty of time to close down your farm, shut down your farm, and go into another business. I'm not sure what else you can do. But if you've got lots of undocumented and you're dependent on undocumented workers, oh my gosh, I just hope the government does the right thing and provides workers to pick out fruit, because it's fairly well known that 50 to 60% at least of farm workers are undocumented. I've heard stories of 80% or more in the Central Valley, but I don't know if that's true. All employers must enroll not later than 4 years after the regulations. Repeat, all employers going to have 4 years under the current law. Agriculture, labor, or services would be required to enroll 4 years after the enactment of the Legal Workforce Act. This is, believe it or not, the stumbling block. Agriculture, as you know, is pretty important in the United States, so they want to make sure that they do have somebody to pick the crops, and the Legal Workforce Act presumably will provide labor and the opportunity to bring in foreign workers to pick those strawberries. Otherwise, strawberry price is going up through the moon, or no strawberries for you, my favorite healthy food. So we have somewhat of a crisis situation brewing, folks. This is the steam train that cannot be stopped. There is no question mandatory e-verify is coming down. Who is opposed to it? Well, agriculture is not very happy. The Chamber of Commerce has now cut a deal with the unions, so it looks like we are going to have mandatory e-verify. This thing is going through, folks. Get ready for it, which is why you're online today. Let's move over to new worker protections. Of course, we have new worker protections. Individuals will be able to challenge non-confirmation filings. Oh, wonderful. So we got a tentative non-confirmation hit because Bernie Wolfstorff just decided to take his wife's married name. In California, you can do it, and I'm the new Bernie Goo. I get a TNC, and I can challenge you. So there we are, employer. We're going to protect our workers because you can't refuse to hire me. I can't refuse to hire myself. Maybe I could fire myself. That would be nice. It's called retirement. And the bottom line is that I will have an opportunity to appeal. Of course, I could sue my company because my company laid me off because I didn't have the right to be employed, separate entity. The bill provides protections for employers based on good faith reliance. Now, this is kind of nice. It's kind of a little bit scary. As I mentioned earlier, the employer is walking a tightrope between asking for too many documents, not accepting certain documents, so where the E-Verify results are hazy or we have tentative non-confirmation, there is still some protection for the employer. So the employer will have some protection. Now, identity fraud, as I mentioned, is a major concern, so they are hoping that there will be a lock with the social security numbers to avoid abuse. There will be a limit as to the number. You can only get 3 social security cards in 1 year or 10 in your lifetime. So if you're the kind of guy who loses all your documents regularly and you lose your social security card 9 times, you are out of luck. You will not get a 10th card. I don't know if these things are going to work, but this is what Congress is looking at in order to limit the number of social security cards so you can only lose it 3 times in 1 year. Be careful where you put that original social security card. Wait a second, you've already lost your social security card. How many people know where their original social security card is? And by the way, you're not allowed to laminate it. Did you know that laminating your social security card can impact its legality? Bernie, why are you mentioning irrelevant stuff? Okay, so the GAO is going to also make sure that the E-Verify database is accurate. The General Accounting Office is going to verify this. Look, it has got better over the years. I must concede. I did a blog some time ago, not ready for prime time. The E-Verify system is not ready for prime time because, well, it's got mistakes. The good news is that they are fixing it up and it's getting better, but it's still not at 100%. So you hire 100 workers, you only have 5 or 6 problems. Well, wonderful. What do you tell those 5 or 6 executives that they cannot work? You hire this new executive, it's $200,000 job hire, you get a tentative non-confirmation, you put him on the payroll. Really? Really? I don't think so. You're not going to put him on the payroll because they do not have the right to be employed. This is a system that we have to be very careful. These, by the way, again, folks, this is the new proposed rules. How many other people have told you about this? Nobody. You are hearing it now for the first time. Yes, this is the first time. I don't know anybody that's doing a webinar on this stuff yet, and the reason why is because Congress just dropped this bill on Tuesday. Today is Wednesday. Within 24 hours, folks, it's Thursday today. Okay, so 48 hours, shoot me for a day. Anyway, the civil penalties here, there's something pretty scary in here. Knowingly hiring that domestic worker. Yes, you knowingly hired that nanny between 35 and 75, since I've got a butler, a nanny, a gardener, and what is 75 times 5? No, wait, how many? 10. So I've got these 10 undocumented workers, 7,500, that's $75,000. Ouch! That was painful. $75,000 just went down the tubes. Wait, I've got more than 10 undocumented workers, knowingly hiring 10 undocumented. Never mind the $7,500. Don't pick up $200. Go straight to jail. You are knowingly hiring. Also, civil violations for not filling the form out correctly. Between $500 and $2,000 for each violation. Repeat. $500 and $2,000 for each violation. Okay, so I have 10,000 I-9s. They're all done wrong. My experience is 50% of I-9s or more are done wrong. I've got 10,000. I need help here. Could someone please help me with the math? So $1,000 violation, 10,000, is that $1 million or is that 10 million? I don't know. Never been good at math, which is why I'm a lawyer. But the simple bottom line is your mere mistakes will result in very heavy fines. They already do. So the civil penalties will become effective 1 year. Bernie, this is just proposed. It's not really going to happen, right? Oh, yeah? Yeah? Well, who wants to bet with me? I'm going to bet. I'm going to give an even bet. Anybody want to lose $1 with me? Come and bet $1. This is going to get enacted within the next 12 months. I think we're going to have mandatory E-Verify, regardless of whether we have comprehensive immigration reform. Congress has said enough undocumented hires. I'm ready to bet $1. We only have about 150 people, so I could only lose $150, but I think I'm going to make $150. What is this first bullet you've got up here about a presumption? The employer is presumed to have knowingly hired an unauthorized worker. Oh, really? Well, isn't that nice? But failed to verify in E-Verify. So after it's mandatory, you don't bother to use the system. Presumption of knowingly hiring. Ouch. There's two things here on the slide that are very important. One is the penalty for record keeping, $500 to $2,000. The other is for knowingly hiring, between $3,500 and $7,500. If you have E-Verify and the person's not authorized, bingo, we got you at $3,500 minimum, $7,500 maximum. That's just the civil penalties. Oh gosh, there's a whole lot more. Okay, so ensuring compliance is going to be very important. Just so you know, this cannot be used as a screening tool. Something good, when you re-verify an employee, I'm going to get into this, so somebody is re-verified, they're going to give the 3-day grace period. So let's assume that you have to re-verify an employee. So let's suppose you have a worker whose employment authorization expires. You have to re-verify that person's right to be employed on Section 3 before, repeat, before the end of their employment authorization. The legislation will give you 3 days to do that, give you a little wiggle room. Civil penalties will go to E-Verify funding and education. Oh, goody. So instead of going to hiring more ICE agents, it's going to be going to education. Employers will be required to satisfy refresher training. Nice. Because, you know, the problem is at the moment people are signing up and they are not even doing the initial training, never mind the refresher training. So that will be required. And yet another new form. Well, part of today's topic, I know we're running out of time, but part of today's topic is the new Form I-9. So will we have another one? Yes, we most likely will. And what's the basis? What are we looking at? List B documents. Now, a List B document is an ID document. It's driver's license, etc., etc. These are being favored because we can do photo IDs. Now, why do we do photo IDs? Because we want to avoid identity theft. So the photo ID tool is big, and the Bernie Wolfstorff, even though he's using a fake picture from almost 7-8 years ago, yes, I'm much older than that picture you saw, it's not fake, it's still me. It's just my beard went gray, working too hard, and immigration is aging me well before my time. So increased involvement of Social Security Administration, a tamper-resistant SSA card. Oh, nice, tamper-resistant, wear-resistant, water-resistant. Oh, nice, no document fraud, come on. You know what? Don't want to sound funny, but you can buy these things on Alvarado Street for $50. You know, as fast as they make fancy documents, so do the fake people make even more. So there we have the restriction: 3 cards a year and no more than 10 cards in a person's lifetime, barring extenuating circumstances. And of course, we have worker protections. What are the worker protections? Let me tell you my favorite one. Sorry, this makes me sound a little bit yuck. But, you know, you question a worker's right to be employed. You're about to lay him off. You see, they can't get unemployment. Repeat, undocumented can't get unemployment. But they can get workers' comp. Ouch! I just cut off my finger. Ouch! My back just went out. Ouch! Let's put in a workers' comp claim. I'm going to get laid off. This is sadly what's happening extensive. Fingers are rolling off the slicing machine because people can get workers' comp, but they cannot get unemployment when you lay them off. So, folks, you need to do this correctly. You need to know what's going on. There's a very scary regime out there because the workers are, of course, fighting back. And you know what? I'm a little bit liberal. Why shouldn't they be? They've been working there 15 years, and this E-Verify steam train is coming down the pike, and it's going to squash anybody who does not have unauthorized employment. So get your I-9s in order right now. Common issues in I-9 compliance. We have now flipped topics, folks. We are now moving over to I-9 compliance. We're almost out of time. We've got a long way to go. We're going to teach you all to become experts in I-9s. So what does this say? What is this slide all about? I already told you you cannot use the I-9 as a pre-screening tool. That is discrimination. And the I-9 has to be completed whenever somebody performs labor or services in return for wages or remuneration. Bernie, hold it a second. Remuneration? Food and lodging? You got to do an I-9? Oh, really? Ouch. Yuck. This is serious stuff. Okay. I-9s have to be completed for all people who are employed other than the casual exception. So maybe that babysitter you don't have to worry about. And by the way, all these agencies are connected. So, you know, there's another one called IRS. They don't connect too much, but SSA, Social Security Administration, IRS, I-9s, are you paying your taxes? Bernie, just move on and deal with the I-9 stuff. So there we have it, folks. How many of you have seen this beautiful I-9 form? There it is, the new form. Well, not really, just part of it. This is the new form that is required to be completed. Mandatory after May 7. By the way, the form's already mandatory. It's just that this new form is mandatory. And you have to complete it on or before the first day. Wait a second, on or before the first day. Wait a second, on or before the first day. Bernie, how many times are you going to say that? Everybody gets confused. Section 1 needs to be completed by the foreign national on or before the first day. Have I said that enough times? No later than the first day of employment, but not before accepting the job offer. Wait a second. You don't send your I-9 not before accepting the job offer. Are you folks getting this clear? I am repeating it 25 times. I know I'm giving you a headache. Section 1 needs to be completed on or before the first day, but not before accepting a job offer. Completed by who? Completed by the employer. And if you have a translator, they need to sign off as well. So there you have it. Page 1 of the 2-page form must be completed on or before the first day for the 20th time. Section 1, timing issues. Number 1, must complete the form. Now, let's go to Section 2. This is you, the employer. You need to complete this. Please read that attestation. You are swearing that you have seen the original document. Do not sign this document if you haven't. I attest under penalty of perjury. Ouch. Perjury. Serious. Go to jail. Do not collect $200. You swore under penalty of perjury. Now the good thing. Look, they've actually made the form quite nice. So what do? Just fill out all those blocks. Over documentation. So what is the timing issue here? You have 3 days. Complete Section 2 within 3 business days of the first day. So the person completes on Monday. You have to finish this by 5 o'clock on Monday. Close. Try again. The person completes it on Monday, their first day of hire. You have until Thursday at midnight in order to complete the form. List A, document shows your right to be employed and your ID, such as a U.S. passport. You cannot ask for any specific document, or the most important word on this form is or. Do you all see it? There it is. List A, or B, and C. So it's list A, or B, and C. Very, very important. Now, re-verification, they've renamed this, re-verification and rehiring. So somebody's employment authorization just expired. They only need to complete Section 3. If you have any doubts of when to do it, just do a new form. It's easier. But this is for rehires, people that had an expectation of coming back. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the common mistakes. This is going to be less difficult. Social Security number is optional unless you have an E-Verify employer. So many times you may hire someone from Canada, they come across the border, they don't have a social security number, can take a while. That is optional unless you have an E-Verify employer. Or what if it takes a month to get the social security card? I don't know, don't have the problem, don't know how to answer it. Bottom line is you want the person yesterday. Well, it's optional, but what if you're an E-Verify employer? Well, tough luck. So there's a lot of combinations, a lot of problems. Section 1, that's the part the employer has to fill out. There are a lot of common mistakes here, less so with the new form because it's quite nicely filled out. So an alien authorized to work until, make sure that that block is not left blank. We often see that second block left blank on Section 1. Section 1 mistakes, list an A number or I-94 admission number. That is often left blank. If not signed, the employer, this is your little practice pointer, if the foreign national does not sign it, then you have some liability. You have a translator. Can you use the Spanish form? Well, no, you cannot use the Spanish form. Repeat. There is a Spanish form available, but you cannot use it. You can only use it in Puerto Rico. I was going to say Costa Rica, but yeah, let's get this one right. You can only use it in Puerto Rico. You cannot use the Spanish form. Repeat, you cannot use the Spanish form in the United States. You can use it in Costa Rica. You can hold it side by side so if people have trouble. But if the person does not understand the questions, you need to have a translator who must also sign Section 1. Okay, let's go to Section 2. I've already repeated this because it's my favorite. It's all. There you go, your list of documents. This is your I-9 form. List A documents list, such as U.S. passport, your right to be employed, and your ID. Or you do A, B, and C. You've got a discrimination charge. Repeat, discrimination charge. Common mistakes continued. There we go. List A, nicely completed for you. Employment authorization document, all nicely filled out. You note B and C are blank. All right? If B and C are filled out, A is blank. Do not fill out all three blocks. You got a discrimination charge. Let's keep going. I think I just goofed something up. Common mistakes, Part 2. Did not complete information about the document title. Document title is employment. This is employment authorization document, U.S. passport, whatever the document is. Some abbreviations are required. You photocopy the documents but did not complete the form. This is a common one. People copy the documents, attach it, but they don't complete the form. There we go. There's the EAD document that I had earlier. These are common mistakes, people accepting unacceptable documents. You have to look at the list of documents that have been removed, for example, the naturalization certificate. I'm going to fly through this. These slides are really good, folks, but these are the common mistakes that people make. You accept documents that did not reasonably relate to the individual. This gets common. You've got complex. You've got to make a judgment call. Is Bernie Gu really Bernie Wolfstorff? Well, if I give you the marriage certificate, certified original marriage certificate, yes, I got married in Vegas. You're so tacky, Bernie. You got married in Vegas. But, you know, it's a legitimate marriage. I have the marriage. I have 2 lovely children, so it's a legitimate marriage, and I love my wife. I love saying that one. And the simple bottom line is I have the original marriage certificate, so I can prove that I am Bernie Gu because I have that document that reasonably relates to me, and even though my Social Security number, social security card is issued under the name Wolfstorff, I can show with my marriage certificate. But wait a second. So I walk in there, I have my driver's license, I have my Social Security card, I have my marriage certificate, and you say, Bernie, this is not acceptable. I want your U.S. passport. Bingo. We got you for discrimination. Oh, wow. Okay, common mistakes. Employer keeps copies of documents for some employees but not others. So you've got this guy with a phony English accent, Bernie Wolfstorff. You copy his documents. You've got some American-sounding dude. What does American-sounding mean, by the way? So many people with accents. And you discriminate. You ask for copies of some documents, not others. Folks, if you're copying some documents of some employees and not others, you've got a problem. Employer representative who signed the form was not the person who saw the original documents. So I see the original documents. I have my HR person sign the form. Bingo, we got a problem. What about remote hires? We'll get onto that later, but you cannot have me, the HR manager in Los Angeles, sign off on the form and have somebody out there in Kentucky actually review the original documents. Can you use Skype? I don't think so. So let's move on. More problems, common mistakes, employer review and verification. We're now in section 2. Often, repeat this, people fail to list the business name and address. People often forget to do. The nice thing about the new form is that you'd have to leave it blank because they have different blocks now, thank goodness. So just make sure all the blocks are filled out. Sometimes the employer forgets to sign the form, and of course the biggest problem we have is that section 2 is not completed within 3 days of the hire or the employment. Let's move on to section 3. The employer did not re-verify. Under current legislation, if somebody's employment expires, you need to have a calendar system. You have to do this before the employment authorization expires. What about completing all the information? Very, very important. Employer did not sign section 3. These are the 3 most common. Folks, all you have to do is study the common mistakes. 95% of the mistakes fall under common mistakes. There's a lot of others, but I'm just dealing here with the main issues. Employer did not sign. Employer did not re-verify. By the way, under the new legislation, you get 3 extra days to do that. Not much of a break. Now, how to complete form I-9 for non-immigrants? Well, oh my gosh, is this difficult? All right, this one is tough. But basically, for most of your non-immigrant visas, you just complete Section A. Repeat, Section A. You put the passport information and you put the I-94 information. Bingo, you got it. That wasn't hard. So for foreign nationals, generally speaking, it's List A, but you can't tell them which to do. You cannot tell them which to do. So some of them are going to try and do List B and C. They're going to have an ID document, but for non-immigrants, it's generally List A is generally the story. If they have a non-immigrant visa, you put in the I-94 information and you put the passport information. There's your nice, simple answers. What is an I-94? There it is. Beautiful I-94. We have the electronic one. We have the old manual one. And hold your breath, folks. Hold your breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. By the way, this is 2009. This person's undocumented, so don't try and hire them. What is this? New electronic downloadable I-94. A what? Downloadable? Yes, folks, no more paper I-94. Now, what if the person travels? They won't be able to get it. So you're going to have to remind your foreign nationals, starting very, very soon, to download their I-94s. You got one thing out of this. You've learned absolutely nothing, but you got cbp.gov/I-94, and you are going to have the foreign national retrieve a copy of the I-94. But you're giving me a headache. One more time. You're going to have the foreign national retrieve the I-94 card because there is no more paper I-94 card. Okay? So this is the document that you need in order to complete. You see the bottom there, I-94 card? Well, you don't have one. You will, thank goodness, have an expiration date stamp in the passport, but you won't have the document number because you're going to have to download it from the website. Yippee, we got a new point. Now, what is this thing? Nice picture, huh? That's a visa. That's a B1 visa. So that's what we use to I-9? Oh, no, 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 no. You do not use a visa to I-9. So how do you complete it? With an EAD card, employment authorization card. So you hire someone on optional practical training. You fill out with the EAD, nice and easy. There it is. Oh my gosh, that was too easy. Somebody's got a pending green card. They fill out a List A document. What is an EAD? Well, who's that guy up there? Looks a little bit like our Attorney General, Eric Holder. Bernie, don't make silly jokes. Yes, that's the new EAD card. That's the old EAD card. Kind of hard to read if you're an old guy like me, but there's an expiration date on it. Make sure you calendar that expiration date. Otherwise, you are knowingly continuing to hire an undocumented worker, and you need to complete Section 3. I need to stop and breathe. I haven't breathed for about an hour or so. Okay, STEM OPT. Folks, this only gets more complicated. F1 STEM OPT. What is STEM? Is that connected to a flower? No, it's science, technology, education. Let's try one more time. Science, technology. I just went brain dead on the E. And mathematics. Science, technology. Tal, help me. I got stuck on the E. Science, technology. I don't know why I went brain dead. I'm talking too quickly. But anyway, there's your STEM OPT. By the way, the chat column's open, so you're welcome to start with your questions and your criticisms. Like no more silly jokes, please. So anybody who's graduated in the STEM, you can get the list of STEM occupations by going to the ICE website. And these are students who have 12 months on their employment authorization. Why did I forget the E? Engineering, Dumbo Bernie. Engineering, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. 12 months of OPT. And if you've graduated in these areas, you can get a 17-month extension, but only, repeat, only if the employer is E-verified. So that's how you do it. In order to get the 17-month extension, you complete Section 3. So you have your EAD, you have your I-20, the issuing authority is CVIS or I-CVIS. There's how you do your STEM OPT extension. Make sure the I-20 form is endorsed by the school official. Repeat, make sure the I-20 is endorsed by the school official for the STEM extension. Otherwise, it's not valid. What about CPT? Oh, Bernie, you're giving me a headache. Wait, I already have a headache. We should give 2 Tylenol with every Bernie webinar. An F1 CPT, how do you I-9 them? This is how you I-9 them. You have to complete 3 blocks, folks, 3 blocks. Passport, I-94 card, which basically says nothing because usually it's a D/S, but you have to download it from the internet, and the CVIS form, the I-20 CVIS form that needs to be updated, an unexpired passport. So what if the foreign national has an expired passport? Ooh, nasty. Make sure that your foreign nationals do not have expired passports. Give them reminders and make sure their passports are valid. Well, there you have it, folks. There's your I-20 with the CVIS number, with the CPT notation. This is the document that is used for the block, the 3rd block on the form. In the old days, they only had 2. It was quite complicated. There's the I-94 card, which says nothing, but of course that won't be available in future. It's only the downloadable. What about a J1? You have to I-9 a J1. How many J1s in the United States? Several 100,000. Repeat, several 100,000. How do you complete it? Not too difficult. There you go. Passport I-94, which is going to be downloadable, and the DS 2019. DS 2019 has to be completed, and that form is necessary. There's the DS 2019. We should have got a bigger one that you can actually read, but that will also have your CVIS number on it, and there's the I-94. Over documentation. I already spoke about discrimination. No discrimination, folks. There it is. 1-800. Call the U.S. Department of Justice. Do not over document. Do not pick on people with funny accents. Do not request additional documents. Do not discriminate because of national origin. Any discrimination in hiring or firing, trust me, folks, this is federal law. You fired me because I have a funny accent. You should fire me. I'm giving you such a headache. Okay, let's move on. Common issues, document abuse. Do not request specific documents. Do not request documents before the interview. Okay? So it goes like this. Write this down. Take your pencil. If we offer you employment, will you be able to show unrestricted right of employment? If we offer you employment, will you be able to show proof of your right to be employed on an unrestricted basis? If we offer you employment, will you be able to show proof of your right to be employed on an unrestricted basis? Because the person may have a work permit that expires in 3 weeks. That's the only question you're allowed to ask. And you're only allowed to request to see documents after you have made the job offer. So you cannot pre-screen. You can put it in your recruiting documentation that we don't sponsor. And you can say, if offered employment, you'll be required to show proof of your right to be employed. I'm not a labor lawyer, shouldn't be in this arena. Original versus photocopies. There used to be some debate. The bottom line is you have to see the original, except of course a birth certificate, because that's on file, so you see a certified copy of that. How does an employer know if a document is real? Well, you know what? I know I sound silly. I know I am silly. But I actually have what do they call it? A magnifying glass. I have it because my eyesight's bad. I actually hold it up there and I have to look at documents. I can't see without a magnifying glass. But often you see the typing is bad. There's mistakes on some of the phony documents. Hard to tell. Constructive knowledge, you should have known. Constructive knowledge, you should have known that this was a fake document. The typing was bad. Oh, really? You have liability. Okay. This, hear no evil, see no evil, close your eyes. Constructive knowledge, should have known. Totality of the circumstances. Failure to complete or improperly complete Form I-9. Turn a blind eye. Reckless or wanton disregard. CK, not CPK. California Pizza Kitchen. It's not CPK. It is CK. Constructive knowledge. Oh, I don't need to bother with that stuff. I didn't bother. We got a no-match letter from the Social Security Administration. We threw it away. Well, constructive knowledge. We got you. Big fines. Should the employer copy supporting documentation? Yes, 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 yes. What if it shows all your past mistakes? Look, folks, we want to show compliance. Copy your documents. To copy or not copy. I'm not having the argument anymore. I'm telling people they must copy. And by the way, E-Verify employers must photocopy if it's used as part of the photo screening tool. So they are now required. But don't copy more than required. What about the receipt rule? I lost my passport. I've got a receipt. Is that good? Nope. Wait, the receipt rule. I could spend hours on the receipt rule. It's complicated. You cannot use a receipt as proof of your right to be employed. It is, scratch that. I need to correct that. It is only for lost, stolen, or damaged documents. Receipt for a replacement document where the document has been lost, stolen, or damaged. You have 90 days. I repeat, 90 days. I got that first point a little bit wrong. I don't know what's happening. I'm talking too fast. Lost, stolen, or damaged documents, you've got 90 days to present a receipt. But a receipt for a new document which is replacing an expired document. This is the problem that I have. I just discovered that my passport is expired. So I filed and I have a receipt for my new passport. Can I use that? No, it's not a lost, stolen, or damaged document. Repeat, my U.S. passport's expired. Can I use it? No. I filed for a replacement. Can I use the receipt? No. I'm a foreign national. I have an employment authorization document. I left it to the last minute to file for a replacement. Can I use the EAD? Nope. Scratch that. Can I use the EAD receipt? Nope. It is not a lost, stolen, or damaged document. So you have to lose, damage. Wait. That sounded proactive. I'm not trying to be sneaky. Bottom line is that the receipt rule only applies to lost, stolen, or damaged, not to expired documents. Repeat, repeat, repeat. I can get into this in some more detail. The simple bottom line is when you use the receipt, you put in the word receipt for the passport, as I've done it there. When the original document comes in, you need to line it out, initial and date. So you see the original document, initial and date that new document, the new passport when it's come in, and you can update the I-9 by striking through. Don't white out. You strike through the word receipt. You strike through your initial and update. Repeat, strike through initial and update. So there are limitations on the use of the receipt rule. Be very, very careful. Exception for refugees, exception for temporary I-551. I'm not going to get into those. They're too complicated. Here's some more complicated options. I'm sorry, I'm running out of time, folks. The receipt is an acceptable document. I need folks to know this. When you have an H-1B and you jump to another one, to another employer, you can use the receipt for the new H-1 as part of your I-9. H-1B cap gap. That is the gap between the end of OPT and the beginning of the H-1B fiscal year, October 1. You can use the receipt for the H-1B for cap gap closing. Non-immigrant extensions, 240-day rule. You file your H-1 extension, you've got 240 days to get an approval. You can then use the receipt as an appropriate document. You have to turn your head, everybody, over 100 people, turn your head to the left, twist it, oh, ouch, just put my neck out. AC-21, this is how you complete the Form I-9 for AC-21 portability. I will be sharing this PowerPoint with you folks, so don't panic if you didn't get it all. You just write AC-21 and the date that the H-1 petition was submitted to the immigration in the margin of the Form I-9. If you happen to be our client, don't sweat. Just photocopy the document, send it to us. We'll double check and make sure that you've got it right. But AC portability can take 5-6 months to get a new H-1B. You can use the receipt to I-9 the new hire. Boy, did I say that slow enough. Okay, AC-21, those are the documents you need. Unexpired foreign passport, I-94, proof of payment of the government filing fee, copy of the I-129 form, and evidence that the new H-1 has been filed. That could, in fact, be a FedEx receipt or the government receipt. AC-21 is kind of difficult. Once you get the approval, there's your approval. You update Section 3, that's the bottom part of the I-9, and you record the document title, the document number, and the expiration date in the new Section 9. What? Let's try again. In the new Section 3 of the form. Cap gap closing. There it is. Not too difficult. Fill out EAD, CVIS, and the 797 receipt. Very easy with the new form, by the way. And then once the H-1B is approved, you can update using Section 3, but of course no later than October 1. Folks, is this complicated? October 1. That's the date the new H-1B came in. This is a cap gap case. Those of you who don't know about cap gap, you're massively confused. I'm sorry, I don't make these rules. I need 3 hours to explain it. But you're basically using expired documents in some instances. And in this case, you're using a receipt to complete the Form I-9. And then no later than October 1. Of course, if we get the new legislation, you get 3 extra days to complete Section 3. Under the current rules, you have to do it before October 1. Hopefully the H-1B has been approved by then. Not all of them will be, by the way. NIV extensions. This is non-immigrant visa. You've got the 240-day rule. This is how you do it. Not too difficult. There you go. Section 3, you put in the receipt. So you filed. You've got the 240-day rule. What do? You complete Section 3. Because your person's already on an H-1, you file it, you put in 797 receipt, you put in the file number, and then you write those magic words. 240-day extension, the date that it was submitted to immigration, that's the H-1 extension. And of course, this is signed super HR person. This is for the 240-day rule. Remember to calendar that. Are we confused yet? Have we had enough? Is this stuff complicated? Yes, I'm sorry, but it is. Common issues. Can an employer terminate an employee for failure to produce documents within 3 days of hire? Yes. 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 But please, consult a labor lawyer. I'm not a labor lawyer. I'm only an immigration lawyer. But simple bottom line is that if the person does not produce documentation, exceptions under E-Verify, if the person did present the documentation, you have the tentative non-confirmation, then there's more time. Re-verification and rehires on or before the expiration date. I've mentioned it. Some of these points I've mentioned several times. I'm mentioning them again. You let the employee choose from the list of acceptable documents. You hold the form in front of the employee and say, please show proof of your right to be employed. You do not tell them which documents to get. Why? Discrimination. Re-verify. Common mistakes. Do not re-verify U.S. citizens. We don't care if their passport's expired. Permanent residents. The green card's valid for 10 years. Do not re-verify them. You don't need to. How am I supposed to know that? You joined my webinar. That's how you're supposed to know it. Common mistakes. That's a temporary green card, folks. That's a green card that just came in from the United States. This endorsement stamp is valid for 1 year, does need to be re-verified. Repeat, you get the original card, you could complete a completely new I-9 form, or you can complete Section 3. Common mistakes, continuing employees. Somebody's off maternity leave, vacation, don't need to be re-verified. Seasonal employment, you had an expectation of rehire. Some complicated stuff here. There's a handy little chart. This is the situation with regard to rehires. 3-year cutoff date. Is the rehire within 3 years of the date of the previous I-9 was completed? Yes. Is employment authorization still valid? Yes. You update the existing I-9 at Section 3. If not, you must. This is for an existing I-9. If it predates I-9, so you can't use the old form, you must re-verify on the current form. This is complicated. I can't really summarize it in one sentence. When in doubt, complete a new I-9. If you completed a new I-9 for a rehired employee and you didn't have to, do you potentially have sanctions? Check with me. But this is common with rehired employees. Or follow my chart. My chart's not too difficult. And by the way, this is in the handbook. Mergers, acquisitions, and restructuring, that's another 3-hour session. But if you don't re-I-9 in the event of a merger, acquisition, or restructuring, and by the way, they give you considerable leeway, you can be held, will be held liable for the errors of the prior employer. You could have criminal liability when you buy a company because you did not do new I-9s. I always recommend re-I-9 the entire workforce. Some people don't want to do that. You're going to end up having to lay. So you buy a company for $100 million, you discover 3/4 of the workers are undocumented, you lay them all off, you close the company down, you lost $100 million. What did you do wrong? You didn't call Bernie, 1-800 Visa Law. This sounds like a sales pitch. It is. 1-800 Visa Law, mergers, acquisitions. I always get the call after the deal was closed. Okay, organization of your I-9s. You have to split them into 3 categories. Number 1, don't put them in your personnel files. Don't infect your personnel files. Organize into 3 categories: current employees, expiration dates, and terms. Your current employees, those with expiration dates, need to be re-I-9'd. Break your I-9s into 3 categories. Current, those that have expiration dates. Remember, passports and green cards don't need to be re-verified. And the terms. So once you term somebody, you then have to learn the purging rule. You don't want to be keeping old I-9s, folks, not beyond the period of time required. So we can get into electronic retention, but remember, even if you do electronic retention, be careful. You are allowed to destroy the originals, but you better make sure the system works. People have been fined heavily with some of the bad electronic systems. So go look at the M274 handbook. These are the retention rules. It's confusing. 3 days after the date of hire or 1 day after termination, whichever is the later. This is from the time of termination. You have to pretty much keep them forever if they're still working there. Are you confused with the math? That word is later. The later of 3 years after the date of hire or 1 year after the date of termination. We made it simple. We have a chart. Print it out. There it is, folks. Enter the date the employee started. Add 3 years to line 1. Termination date, add 1 year to line 2. Whichever is the later, A or B, enter here. Store form I-9 until this date. There's your retention rule form. We made it simple. Actually, I take no credit. This is the government's little chart. Common issues. Correcting mistakes. It's never too late to complete I-9s. Some of you are sweating. Right now you are sweating. You don't find my jokes funny and you are not enjoying this I-9 webinar. You know what? It's not too late. Stop and do your I-9s. As for being funny, you need laughing gas. I don't know if that stuff works anymore. You used to go to the dentist when I was a kid. They would give you funny stuff, make you laugh. I think so. Not really. I'm not that old. How to correct mistakes and omissions. Never delete. Never delete. Never delete. Never white out, never black out. Never white out, never black out. Never delete, never backdate. Never backdate. You're backdating. You're backdating till 5 years ago. You are going to jail. Do not collect $200. That is fraud. You're lying. Penalty of perjury. Never black out, never white out, never backdate. Clearly strike out date and initial. There it is. You've learnt it, the one-liner. Strike out date and initial. By the way, we have a chat column. I haven't chased all of you away yet. You're still online. Well done. To those of you who are hanging in there, attach a short memo to file if necessary. Sometimes you can't black out, white out. Sometimes you need to explain. You can attach a little memo to file. That gets difficult with an electronic system. Wait a second. Are we done? Are we done? Yes. Are we out of time? No, not really. We went a little bit beyond 5 minutes. We're almost on time. We're now going to do some questions. It's kind of hard when I don't have the I-9 in front of you, but let's see how many questions we have. Maybe we have no questions. No, no such luck. We have, oh my gosh, there we are. Thank you. 7 or 8 people. E is for engineering. Oh boy, do I feel dumb about that one. Thank you all for sharing. That was so silly. And there I see lots of my clients and folks. I don't know what happened to me. Just too much information. Will you be sending out the slides? Yes. The audio is not the best. I hope not a lot of people had that. Maybe it was me stalling to breathe. Let's take these questions. Are those persons here on a TN visa have to submit an I-9? Yes, everybody. If yes, are there any documents specific to the TN? The TN, by the way, is the Canadian Treaty NAFTA visa. Specific documents, yes. There was a slide on that. You show your Canadian passport and you show your I-94 card. That's a List A document, but you cannot specifically ask for any document. So be careful of that. Yeah, the audio was in and out. I see on the guidance that E-Verify cannot be used to pre-screen. Can the employer use E-Verify after extending the job offer or only after the job is extended? Difficult question. I think once you've extended the job offer, you're probably okay. At that point, there's no discrimination because you've already made the job offer. Haven't they recently been talking about a low wage or a labor-based immigration? Yeah, they're talking about providing visas for lesser skilled workers, but that's just proposal. Is the new Form I-9 effective March? Oh, hi, Leslie. Is the new form effective March 7 or March 8th? Did I say March? Bernie, you're not very well focused here. The new I-9 form is effective May. Did I say March? Boy, I hope I did not. It's May 7, not March. The new I-9 form is May 7, not March. There was some
something that was not clear about it. The government wasn't sure whether it was March 7 or March 8. It's May 7. Repeat, May 7. New I-9 form, not March, and certainly not the 8th. Now, let's get sneaky. What if the foreign national completes the old form on May the 7th, Section 1? Can you still verify it, or do you have to make him complete the new form? And the government's actually opined, this is nowhere in writing, anybody, take it from me, that if you're still using the old form on May the 6th, the employer still has 3 days to sign, and technically could sign after, but I wouldn't do it. Just use the new form. How long before the start date can the employee complete the form? Is there a too soon date? Well, again, I don't have a problem as long as the job offer has been made. So I think once you've made the job offer, what I do when I make a job offer, and the person accepts, as soon as they've accepted the job offer, I then send them the form I-9 and ask them to please complete it and bring with them on their first day. That's the way I do it. I think it's the safe way to do it. So once they accept, I say, thank you. Please complete the attached form I-9 and bring with you proof of your right to be employed. Nice question here. Assuming E-Verify is mandated by Congress, does ex post facto laws come in to prevent those already present and having filed Form I-9s from the... Yeah, I don't think they're going to make it retroactive. 15 people told me what E is for engineering. Oh, here's a good one. More silly jokes. Thank you. Oh, more nice comments. Thank you so much. You're making it interesting. Yeah, it's not a very interesting topic, but I try and get a few jokes in. Can a notary certify they saw the original documents and HR professional fill out Section 2? No, it's got to be the same person. This is the problem we have with remote hires. Oh, wait a second. You're putting the two together. No, the person who sees, the person who certifies. You see, you don't have to use a notary. So let's suppose that you're hiring someone in Alabama and you're in Los Angeles. You really need to have that same person complete, same person who sees the document. Could you have the two people together? I might buy that, but you're going to have to prove that. That's a little bit difficult. So the notary can be the person who certifies that they saw the original documents, and then you have a remote HR professional complete Section 2. But try and roll it into one. Just have the HR professional be the person who certifies that they've seen the document. Gets a little bit complicated. Thank you for the information. No, that's nice. We always like compliments. Is an employer with a single employee required to fill I-9? Yes. Repeat, yes. One employee only. It's only if it's casual. So even in the domestic household, it's required. I'm going to answer every single question, and I'm flying through it. I have this little thing. Always answer every question. If an employee is initially I-9'd with a valid passport and I-94 card, H-1B for example, and when their I-94 expires, their passport also happens to be expired, do we have to re-enter their new passport information when re-verifying? Ha! You may have got me, but I think that you should, and I think that if, you know, you can always attach a new I-9. Remember, you don't have to complete Section 3. So when you're in doubt or when you get confused or when there's a new passport, so the foreign national was on an H1 and now they have not only got an extension of their H1B status, but they've also got a new passport, that gets a little bit confusing. I always say, when in doubt, just fill out a new I-9. Some tricky questions here, and I'm shooting from the hip, so, you know, feel free to scan and email me. My email address is my name, Bernard @Wolfstorf. Scan it in, and I can double check, make sure that I give you, here's what somebody just said. Notaries don't want to sign the certification section. Oh yeah, I know that. I've seen the problem. So just use the HR professional, okay? So, you know, technically speaking, you've got an employee in LA, you're calling me from Arizona. Technically, I could complete that for you. You could appoint me. I developed a little form that I use for remote hires. Technically, I could verify that person. I'm not an HR professional, but I could certify that person's right to be employed. I could examine their documents, and I could complete Section 2. But you're right. Notaries, a lot of notaries just don't want to sign the certification section. If an employee from one of our international offices is in the U.S. for a short-term assignment, oh, I get this one all the time, and therefore they remain on the payroll from their home country, do we still have to complete? You know, I went through that a little bit about remuneration, if there's a benefit, if the person's employed in the United States, if they're just coming here for a short-term period of employment. You know, here's your problem. If the employee is hired abroad and you need to verify their right to be employed, they may not have their right to be employed. You may not be able to complete the Form I-9. So you're an international company. You've got the CEO from the UK coming out. Question is, you're arguing that they are not employed in the US. So, for example, we have something called a B1 in lieu of H1. Technically, that person is on the overseas payroll. Technically, a B1 can be employment authorized document. And the document that you're using to I-9 them is the B1 I-94. So some of these documents are not per se employment authorized documents, so they're kind of complicated. So if someone's coming into the United States, number one is, do they have the right to be employed? And on these short-term assignments, for example, if someone comes on a short-term assignment and they come under the WB waiver business category for up to 90 days, yes, they may be employed, and WB is technically an employment authorized category. But what if they came on a WT, waiver tourist? So you're I-9ing them with a document that does not authorize them to be employed. Another analogy that I see from time to time is when someone comes over as a nanny. That's a B1. Can they be employed with the I-94 card? Technically not, but you should and must complete Form I-9 on day one and verify it within 3 more days. And you have to have an employment authorization card, the EAD. So maybe use the I-94 card in the interim on day one, and then when the plastic card comes, either complete a new I-9 or update with Section 3. Oh boy, this is complicated stuff. We're getting a lot of remote hire questions. If notary completes the I-9 and completes Section A, B, and C in the employer section, are we in violation? Oh, an easy question. Yes, 100%. Okay, you need to redo that. They goofed it. Okay, you hired somebody who was incompetent. I'm sorry, I don't like criticizing people, but if they've completed A, B, and C, you, the employer, have liability for document abuse and for discrimination. Stop. Get that done again. I am not happy. Not happy. You have liability. That foreign national can sue you for document abuse based on the notary's inability to read the form properly. Can't any remotely located manager where the new employee is sign the form? Yes. Hurrah. You got it. That's it. Any manager who sees the documents remotely can see the original documents and sign Section 2 of the form. You got your solution. Oh, somebody asked me a complicated question. Are you saying that the CFO from another country payroll on a B1 visa needs an I-9? You know, let's get real. The reality is they are not done. The question, is that person working in the United States? I'm going to debate that one. As a practical matter, when a senior executive comes over from the United States and he's just coming for a short meeting, are they in fact working in the United States? No, I'm going to argue they're not working. They're just here for business meetings, negotiations, and consultations. But what if somebody comes over on a B1 in lieu of an H1, what we call BLO? So they're on the payroll of the overseas company on a short-term assignment in the United States. Folks, the B1 is an employment authorized category. And certainly in situations where the person is coming over and working in the United States, albeit on the overseas payroll, so the salary is coming from abroad, but the person is nevertheless performing services for which they're being rewarded, we're not always that worried about what the source of remuneration is. We are worried about whether the person is being remunerated, and we are worried about whether the person is performing work. And if the person is working in the United States, they need to be I-9. If they're coming for a business meeting, which is what I'm going to suggest, your CFO is not coming here to work. Your person, CFO, is just coming to check up. It's not really working. I know people get confused with this because, you know, what is work? What I call work, what you call work, is work. But if you look at the B1 regulations, there is a distinction between a business meeting, a negotiation, an observation, and of course employment. And a B1 can be an employment authorized category. Now, folks, for those of you who haven't got this, we have a whole session on May the 1st exactly on this issue. Hopefully they'll be able to give you nice answers. What about someone who comes here on a short-term assignment on an H-1B or L-1 but stays on the overseas payroll? Well, you know, there's an argument that if somebody's on an L, they can be on an overseas payroll. You know, if they're coming here on an H-1B, the assumption is it's a U.S. source salary. Generally, the H-1Bs should pretty much be on U.S. salary, because if you have an audit, they want proof that the individual has been paid salary. Maybe you could provide it. I know in the old days, they used to say on an H-1, what is the source of the foreign national's salary? L1, I'm probably okay with overseas source. Generally, I'm getting conservative. With the H-1B, I'm saying U.S. source. And the question you're asking me is, does this person have to complete a Form I-9? Answer, absolutely yes. So if you've got an L1 working in the United States and the salary is coming from abroad, must you complete an I-9? Absolutely yes. No question about that. Black and white. You know, if you get an audit, they want a list of your current employees. They may have proof that this person was on an H-1, so you don't have any I-9 for that person, you could get fined. Well, folks, we are now pretty much over our time. Thank you to those brave HR folks who stayed on. I hope you've learned something and enjoyed something. You know how to reach me, 1-800-VISA-LAW, Bernard at Wolfsdorf. Email us. Please join us for our future webinars. Spread the good news. And until next time, farewell and enjoy the world of E-Verify and I-9. Thank you so much, everybody.